Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. The internet right now is collectively grabbing those oxygen masks that fall from the planes when they're about to crash, because our guest has been a long time coming. It is the Adam Curry, co-host of No Agenda podcast, one of the original MTV VJs, one of the innovators in this whole space, and someone who I think is a total badass. We're going to talk about me moving to Austin and the corporate press and other things. I'm really excited, as you can tell. Adam, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Michael, thank you. It has been a very long time coming. Part of this my fault. I think I screwed up text messages and replied to ones from 3 years ago, and I'm a total mess. I'm very happy we've connected.
You went full boomer. I was in Austin because you said, next time you're in Austin, look me up. Here's my number. I text you, I DM you, radio silence. I'm like, look, I get it. I'm no Adam Curry.
No, you know what it really is? Because I went through this entire period of trying to find the perfect OTG phone, off the grid phone. So I went back to flip phones. I do this kind of study of these devices, how I can live with them on the show. And so I was going from that to, I went back to an iPhone 5, because it would still support hearing aids. No, that was too good. And so finally I wound up with Graphene OS, which is kind of this de-Googled Android, which you can kind of control and lock down a lot of stuff. And then I fired it up and like, oh, what's this message? I was like, oh, holy crap. So it got lost in the shuffle somewhere, but all for science, Michael.
Something I have to ask you, because I'm sure this is the question you get asked all the time at parties. Okay. For those of us who've worked to somewhat in the industry, musicians as a rule really have something wrong with them in general. It could be different from person to person. You've met a lot of them in your career. So when you're at a party and people are asking you to tell the quintessential MTV story, what's the story that you tell?
Oh,
there it is. I know.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a very friendly way of asking that question. That's kind of good. I would say my Prince story is one of my favorites.
Let's
since
hear it.
I've got a Michael Jackson story. I've got the big names from the 80s and 90s. I have those ready, like cha-cha-cha, like nunchucks. I can whip them out, whenever I need to impress somebody. The Prince story was I was in Minneapolis, and I was doing a commercial for Sam Goody Musicland. This is how I'm dating myself. It was a record store. And it was in the Mall of America, so it was
and in Kings Plaza.
Yes, and they had the whole it was professional crew. It was done on film, and it was early days MTV, so it was cool. And I was staying there for like maybe a week or something for the shoot. And I don't know what, one of those evenings, I'm basically in my hotel room. I don't care too much. It's cold, and I get a call around 11:30 at night and said, "Well, Prince wants to invite you to Paisley Park to a party. Do you feel like going?" I'm like, okay. And I said, well, good, because we got the limo downstairs. I'm like, oh, okay, this is badass now. So in the limo, off to Paisley Park, completely illuminated in purple. You go in this huge white room with on one wall, just all healthy food. There's a DJ in the back with, playing Prince stuff you've never heard before. Beautiful people everywhere. And then Prince over there kind of next to the DJ, kind of hanging in, whatever, some scaffolding or something. And actually some of the extras on my commercial shoot were there. So I was talking, because of course they were all pretty. Yeah, and I'm talking to her. I'm going to go say hi to Prince. No, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't talk to Prince? No, you're way too tall, and honestly, you're pretty white.
Wait, how tall is he?
That's bull crap.
Is he really short?
These are white people telling me. And so I'm like, no. And so I went right over to Prince, who wasn't that small. I mean, okay, it's not that. I'm 6'5", but still, oh gee, it wasn't all that bad. And he was like, oh, dude, I saw that stuff you did with your daughter during Halloween. That was really cool. We were chatting, just chatting for a little bit. So, I know, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, cool. Have a good time. And that was it. My Prince story, except, like maybe an hour later, he was gone. And then some dudes come in and start flashing their flashlights on the ground. Everybody knew, okay, time to leave. We all shuffle out, and there was the car. It took me back to the hotel. My Prince experience, ladies and gentlemen.
um, was there a time when you met someone that you were like really like, holy crap? Like for me, it would be Bowie. If I met Bowie, I'd be like voiding my bowels.
Quincy Jones,
Oh,
hands down. I met Quincy. I was doing a radio show, syndicated radio show called Hitline USA, coast to coast call-in show live. A really, it's like all the bad top 40 radio stations needed content at night. So that was perfect. Yeah. So I put the MTV guy on. And I can't remember exactly why we were in a recording studio, and there was a table, and it was just a square table, and him on one side, me on the other. I'm not quite sure why we said it that. It wasn't like a typical radio studio, but he came in with a bottle of Chateau Latour. And this was kind of in his drinking days. You know, this is a $1,500 bottle of wine.
Right.
And he's like, oh, let's have a drink. And we're doing the show for an hour. And, you know, he did from Lena Horne to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, this is an incredible scala of stuff that he's done. Michael Jackson in the middle. And we just get kind of hammered. And it was so fantastic to be just talking to him. And he was, boom, just on his talking stick and going. I still get goosebumps. I mean, that was really one of the most impressive people I've ever spoken with in entertainment, certainly.
One of the fun things that it is to watch on YouTube is when people who have like a beard for 20 years shave it off and they come out and see their wife and their reaction because it's such a part of their identity, and like the babies start crying because they don't recognize dad. You had the heavy metal hair.
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Was there and that became part of your identity, especially someone who has such a visual career, who's identified by their look. Was there like some moment where you're like, all right, this is over? Was it when grunge started? Like was there like some ceremony? This was a big part of you as a person though.
Yes. In fact, I've attempted to write my book several times and it's failed for many reasons. One is because I think I have one more chapter left and I think I have to do that before I can sit down and codify. But the subtitle would be Held Hostage by My Hair. Because I had really short hair. I was really quite geeky until 19, my first television shows in the Netherlands. And it was actually my first wife who completely styled me and gave me this big hair, which only she could do, which was a problem because if she couldn't travel with me, it was crisis. I mean, I have flassy kind of Mona Lisa hair if it's wet, kind of stringy. You know, this was teasing and, you know, small curl perms and all this stuff. And of course, at the time, it was highly appropriate. That's what, you know, the guys were wearing big hair, and I had the leather jacket and everything. And it was totally my identity. Also, I will say, in television, as a general rule, not my rule, but Merv Griffin's rule, big heads are successful. So I don't really have a big head, but with the hair, I had this added helmet of girth that just kind of made it. And everyone knows me as the guy with the hair, and I wore that quite proudly. It really, I still kept it pretty long, like, you know, almost shoulder length for most of my adult life. And I remarried and after some urging, but also I was tired of it, man, that I can just, like, you know, you get under the shower anytime you want, just get it wet, just dry it off with a towel, pop, 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 done. I'm living my best years right now.
Because I remember I watched this show called My Strange Obsession, or one of those, and there was a woman who not only had extremely long fingernails, which, okay, I can wrap my head around, she also had extremely long toenails. So she couldn't walk like more than 2 inches at a time because you know how they curve, you're going to snap them, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get like vanity before sanity, but at a certain point, like you're saying, like I can't even just really take a shower and look like myself as people expect me to look.
It was literally part of my job. And you're right, it was part of my identity. But spring break, the first time we did spring break, was a nightmare for me because I had to be there by myself. And of course, I got assigned to the Bud Light boat with the damn Spuds McKenzie. And, you know, so of course, everyone sees that big poofy hair that I spend an hour on in the morning in the hotel room. Like, oh, let's give that mofo a little bit of juice. And just collapse, you know, just a complete meltdown. So it was totally traumatizing, but that was part, you know, it was like a professional wrestler, you know, people got to keep up their body appearance or whatever it is. That was my gig. And now, luckily, you know, I've just gone back to radio and have the perfect face and hair for that.
I worked on a book with one of these big heavy metal musicians, and when they started out, this is when glam was a thing. And I asked him, I go, How are you? Tell me what that's like when you're basically getting laid left, right, and center, but at the same time, you guys are wearing the Lancome counter on your face. Like, this is something in contemporary terms that it's hard for guys to wrap their head around. No one thought you were gay. Everyone knew you guys were sleeping around like crazy.
Yeah.
And he basically was like, I don't want to talk about it. And it's like, that's so interesting to me. We have photos. We've got lots and lots of photos. So for him to pretend like this didn't happen just seemed like such an odd, uncomfortable look at his own history. But
also, if you look at, you mentioned Bowie, look at his androgyny throughout certainly his early years, and he'd probably be laughing at the conversations that are happening right now. He's like, these things go in odd cycles. When I grew up in the Netherlands, so I moved there when I was 7. The beach was everyone was topless. Everyone took their shirt off. It wasn't like a nudist beach or a topless beach. Everyone took their shirt off. Sport clubs, it was co-ed showers. And throughout the years, it just became much more Puritan, I guess. And I think it's U.S. media influences, really.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the last 20 years, it's because of immigration, mainly Muslim immigrants coming into the country and having strong objections to it. And that, of course, being adhered to and changing culture. But maybe not in good way. I just remember it wasn't a big deal. It was much more like, this is just your body. That whole country was like that. Even medication. You couldn't get penicillin. The doctor would say, no, I think you should just,
stick it out.
Yeah, stick it out. It's good for you. It's good for your resistance. That was, and now we're talking 40 years ago, 45 years ago.
I can tell you a Bowie story from 50 years ago, and no one else knows this. This is a hot scoop.
Okay.
I, at one point, had my hair cut by Susie Ronson. Susie Ronson was Mick Ronson's widow. Mick Ronson was the quintessential Bowie guitarist. He was there during the whole glam period. And for those who don't know, during this era, Bowie was making a big deal of publicly proclaiming that he's gay or bisexual, whatever. This was a complete stunt. What they would do when they toured America is they would go to the gay bars because they had to make an appearance, but they were terrified of any of the gay people actually talking to them. So they'd sit at a corner in the table, and Susie had to act like she was the girlfriend of each one of them. And it was so serious because Mick, who was from Hull, which is this working class, like Rust Belt equivalent in England, he was just like a blue collar dude who's like, now he's pretending all this stuff. Bowie's giving him a blowjob when he's playing the guitar in was it Moon Age Daydream? This is a whole thing. And some dude, I forget who it was, him and Mick are just having drinks, and they're getting really drunk, and the guy's like, oh God, he's gonna hit on me now. And this Mick, it was as straight as an arrow, just puts his hand on the guy's shoulder, like, all right, have a good night. And just goes and the guy was all confused, but it's like, it was so much of that like Marilyn Manson's another example. It turns out he's a pretty bad
Marilyn
person.
Manson in Amsterdam, like after hours, he was showing all the digital stuff with his, digital artwork. They were way into Photoshop.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of it is, as a lot of it is just show what it is. It's show business.
Yeah, but it's just amazing to what extent people who understand, like, let's suppose that wrestling is fake, they can't apply. And like you just mentioned that, like, this is someone's persona, the Iron Sheik, Hulk Hogan. They don't appreciate that this is the same in music. I mean, this is clearly someone who's playing into like Britney Spears isn't walking around like a Catholic schoolgirl all the time.
But also, and this is where it gets interesting. If you look at today, and I'm a big fan, I don't have accounts, but my wife and I will literally sit down together and do 10 minutes of TikTok videos or reels on Instagram. This is the true persona of these people. When they leave the house, they look like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and even though you've seen them do the makeup from completely homely to, oh my God, what a stunner, and even putting the false teeth in, like, holy crap, that's walking around and I didn't know it. This is now carried over into our everyday life. I mean, this simulation is fantastic. We've gone from what we got en masse from MTV, and we all emulated. We all had the shoulder pads. My wife in the 80s had the same hair as me. I mean, come on. But now it's really spilling over into much broader. I mean, I look at makeup today on the street, I'm like, wow, that would be seen as crazy and way too much, 30 years ago. And now it's just an extension of what people are doing online.
Hey guys, Michael Malice here. Want to take a quick second and thank one of our favorite sponsors, which is Fume, F-U-M. It's a natural inhaler that makes it easy to get the benefits of super plants on the go. If you go to breathefume.com, and breathe has an E at the end, You illiterate. BREATHEFUM.com. Use code Malice10. You get 10% off your order. Here's why I really am glad to promote this product. It is a great way to get off of smoking and off of vapes, because the ritual for what people do with their hands is a very frequent complaint with former smokers. And this is a good halfway step to get you off of nicotine and cigarettes, which are really bad for you. Here's the types of things you get with Fume. You get Reassurance, which is their core that has lavender and lemon. You get Shield, which is peppermint and eucalyptus. How it works is you get this like wooden tube and you stick in the plant core at the end and you basically inhale it like a cigarette, but there's no smoke. You can use it anywhere and it helps you have that ritual to keep you from having those addictions. If you go to breathefume.com and use code Malice10, you get 10% off your order, and we get back to the show. One of the things you and I were talking about before we started, I was born in the Soviet Union, grew up in a Russian household. You grew up in the Netherlands. I think that gives us a unique perspective on America and American culture, especially politically so. What do you think, given your background, that Americans get wrong the most about their own country?
Oh, what Americans get wrong most about their own country. How free we really are. It always surprises me. And this is because a majority of people are underinformed and over socialized, and they believe that, I think if you walk down the street, most people really are so poorly educated that they think, yeah, it's all federal and the president takes care of stuff and makes it all happen. And having actually grown up in a true socialist country with truly good intentions of a real safety net, and seeing how people game the system, how that creates strife and anger and corruption, and just how, believe me, that does not work either. So here, and particularly in Texas, although I'm in Austin technically, so we're moving in 2 weeks, we're moving back into the state of Texas. It's the idea of freedom. You feel it. You really feel it. And you don't get that necessarily from any big city or metropolis anymore. It has its own kind of rules just for survival. People have to act and work with each other in a certain way. But it was almost like I was watching Nomadland. I hadn't seen it yet. And I look at that and I'm like, I feel that. That's in our blood. That's part of who we are. And it really doesn't matter when you came here or how you came here. If you've been here enough, then you feel that. Like, this is our country. We can go wherever we want, and we can make of ourselves whatever we want to make of ourselves. I know it's not really a succinct answer, but that feeling just does not exist anywhere else. And I've lived in the Netherlands, Belgium, the UK. I lived in multiple cities in America. That just does not. That feeling is nowhere else.
I think Americans also take for granted how amiable and friendly most Americans are, and that's not necessarily the norm in other parts of the world. Like, Americans really are kind of very pro-social in a positive way.
Totally. And growing up, and I think you're mid-40s, I'm mid-50s, you just didn't talk about religion and politics. That was just kind of, you could have a good argument with someone about a particular piece of policy, and so maybe we never should have changed that, even though we did. I think is good, because now there's definitely a lot of animosity and dirty crap and projection that we all have hiding under the hood of years of saying, well, that guy's an idiot. Now you can say that whole bunch of people is an idiot. So that to me is, and that's just, we've gotten sucked into that version of the simulation with media and how we're portrayed. I mean, I read Dutch newspapers every single day online, and I see that they're not really looking at our situation. They're just copying and translating what's in the New York Times. I'm not kidding. It's the same verbiage, the same talking points. There's no investigation done. It's really prevalent now where, look, you're talking to a white man in Texas. I must be one of them racist because of these horrible voter laws that we're attempting to pass. The whole political infrastructure is here telling us we're a bunch of racist, crazy people, and that's just copied one for one without actually looking at what is in the bill. I mean, this is not like some crazy stuff that's going on. So that gives an impression that we're always fighting and at strife with each other, and it's an unfortunate kind of psychosis that we live in, and the rest of the world sees us that way. And by the way, this is not unique to us, but our version of it is quite unique.
There is this kind of talking point that is used by blue-pilled people to dismiss criticism that they don't like, and that is whenever, like, for example, I was on, I talked to a bunch of college kids for Justin Amash, and I was talking about my anarchist views and about how education should be private and how what's being taught to kids is completely unconscionable, even forgetting the critical race theory. Like, a lot of it, just the premise that you all have to learn at the same time, you have to learn at the same rate, that you have to defer your self-esteem to that person in the front of the room, and have your sense of intelligence be judged by somebody else instead of having it internal, all this other stuff. And one of the girls, was very viscerally upset by what I was saying, which is, of course, her prerogative. And she was just like, I can't believe this conspiracy theory. And I'm like, this isn't a conspiracy remotely. This is just how the system works. And you were just talking about something else, which is, you can easily hear someone saying, oh, you're saying there's a conspiracy theory in Dutch newspapers. It's not a conspiracy theory at all. All it takes is just a bunch of lazy people, which is the norm in any industry. And you have the one person setting the agenda or the one outlet, and everyone else is like, well, they're reputable, they're leaders. I'm just going to copy what they're doing, and I could go home and sleep with my wife. So when people hear that term, a lot of times it's not even nefarious. It's just a function of people being sloppy and just wanting their paycheck.
Yes, it's also a protection mechanism. I think everyone, and I'm tired of it. I mean, I do this kind of for a living, but the outrage part is the part that I think wears everybody down. And the signals is just mass signals coming at you all the time. And in my mind, everything, all of it is all 100% political, right down to the homelessness in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Austin, Texas. These are political moves. It really has risen way above what I ever thought. Really, when I thought I was a true conspiracy theorist, now I know better. I'm a conspiracy therapist. But back in 2008, the Federal Reserve, fractional banking, how people fall off the edge, but mainly how bad the all systems have become. All systems. My family is, intelligence, military. I'm really the black sheep. But my uncle, Don Gregg, very high in the CIA, who was a national security advisor for Bush Sr. He was definitely mentioned and somewhat involved in Iran-Contra. So, and although I hold him in the highest regard as a 100% patriot, lots of decisions are made and people screw stuff up, but I think he always had the right intent. And there was a book called Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner, a former New York Times writer. And I mean, it really shows you a horrible side of the CIA. And Don's in that book. And I called him up. I said, Don, is this true? And he said, yeah, it's pretty much how I remember it. Wow. And over the years, I've been able to expand more on it with him. And, so the military industrial complex is true. Saber rattling about North Korea has always been about that. He was ambassador to South Korea at one point. So he's told me enough for me to put it all together and go, it's really not okay. And the same with the banking system, and the same with our pharmaceutical system, and the same with our education system. And we're all kind of trapped. We're trapped in an economic jail of not. So the bravest thing I've ever done, in my mind, the stuff that I've always done right, is I knew when to leave. I was able to say, okay, it's scary, but I have to go. I have to move in this other direction because I'm just going to get stuck here. And it doesn't work for me being trapped. But that's what most people are. They're trapped. And, then you add just a little touch of what we used to call cultural Marxism. I mean, this started with the bullying laws. I remember this. We went through this twice a week. And we saw these, and we laughed about it on our show. Oh, this kid called me a name. And I grew up with sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And so we were laughing like, you can never legislate against that in America. Then before you know it, we had hate crimes, which are completely undefined other than you hated someone when you killed them, or when you did this to them. So that didn't take a lot of time. That went really, really, really fast. And I remember us saying it's cultural Marxism. And I remember that being you're a conspiracy theorist. At this point, going back to, a year ago with what we saw in the medical community, with the switching of data, with suppressing information. I mean, if we were into that kind of stuff, we could just be dancing in the end zone all day long, saying, told you so. See, this is exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And so that is our real problem. It's really all rotten to the core. And quite honestly, I think it starts with the financial world. That's really where the biggest problems are, is all the drug money runs through it. All the pharma money, everything runs through it. We're creating it out of thin air. We really have an issue there. And that is very uniquely American driven.
And it's interesting because some of their slogans, for anyone with the slightest amount of critical thinking, are completely incoherent in and of themselves. Now, for example, one thing we heard over the last year is trust the experts, listen to the scientists. You're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor, sure. However, there were many, many doctors on YouTube, Facebook, and other venues who weren't even saying, let's just steelman this. They weren't even saying all this is wrong. They were saying, you guys are presenting something with a degree of certainty, which the data does not match up. And there could be other scenarios, and this could be making it worse. And those people are being censored left, right, and center. And it's like, wait, this person is an expert. They're a medical doctor giving you their informed medical opinion backed up by experiments and data. And they're not even saying, yes, I'm right. They're saying, we need to look at this. This is, I mean, a worldwide pandemic is as complex a social situation as you're going to find, because you're dealing with every political system on earth. You're dealing with every ethnicity, all genders, every climate. This is not going to have a one size fits all situation, but they weren't having it. And what's amazing is now, I'm sure you've seen the stealth editing on all these articles recently about like, okay, even if it wasn't made in a lab, which I would perfectly be willing to accept, it's like to discuss the concept of man-made viruses is something that is of crucial import to all of us, because if that inevitably happens, shouldn't we know what that would look like and what to do in that situation? So it's never about keeping people safe and preserving lives. It's always been about control, and forcing people to submit.
Yes, and what we've learned, and this is another thing I'll say about America, and I'm not the first one to say it. Never underestimate the American public.
Yeah,
they are in mass. We are not stupid, and we know we have good bullshit detectors. Now, a lot of people's bullshit detectors have gone haywire and have been programmed from an early age, and people may have to fall off the island. I don't know, but we have seen constant. I really enjoy the older millennials around 28 to 30 years old. And I'm working with a lot of them in podcasting 2.0 with the Lightning Network and Bitcoin. And, and so they've kind of grown up in a microcosm of what we have witnessed. And that is, born in the 90s during a war, the Gulf War. They saw all that. They saw the shock and awe, et cetera, et cetera. But then we went, to 9/11, and that's very traumatic when you're 10, 11 years old.
Sure.
Like, my head's exploding here. Then, we invaded the wrong country. Whatever. Then we invaded another country, and then it moved along, and everyone's growing up. You're teenagers, and by the way, your friends, brothers, and sisters are going off. Some of them are not coming back. Then we have this huge financial crisis, the Great Recession, the greatest recession, whatever it's supposed to be called. At the same time, with a black president, who of course was black, but not African American, which disenfranchised a lot of Americans. They felt like they were given a raw deal on that one, certainly after 8 years. And then a lot of these young people graduated with a degree that may not be that useful, and they got $50,000 in debt, and they're making $14 an hour. And like, okay, screw this. So, after this pandemic, now we know that you cannot trust science the way we were told, the way we've been told since 2000. Really 2007, with Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore. This has just been, you'll never see snow again except in snow globes. All these things have turned out not to be true. The promise of the education, the piece of paper that you're here for, turned out not to be true. All these things just not true. And you're seeing that because the messaging system has completely fallen apart. It used to be very easy. You'd have your intelligence people working in Africa, and they would write for the Ugandan Gazette or the Ugandan Times. This is what's going on. And then the New York Times can say, according to the Ugandan Times, here's what's happening. And you can shape policy that way. And that's really the Central Intelligence Agency. That is what they do. They write half of the books. They write half of the news articles. Please go look at the Church Commission. People have heard of it before. This did not stop. I suspect many of my relatives know more about this than they can ever tell me. They shut up when I enter the room and tell me I have no clearance. True. So, that system is no longer working because of Michael Malice, because of No Agenda Show, because of Joe Rogan, because of Jordan Peterson, because of Tim Pool, because of Megyn Kelly, and on and on and on, right down to X22 report and this stuff that's valid there too. So we are now learning how to make up our own minds. Unfortunately, we still resort to the digital crack that is social media, mainly Twitter, to just get a good charge or whatever it is. I mean, we know it's analogous to drug abuse. But besides that, we're kind of making up our own minds, and the genie's out of the bottle. There's no turning back. They're not reaching us. People are turning away from cable news. They're turning away from Hollywood in general. Look at the award shows. I mean, celebrities are no longer influencers. I mean, this is a huge loss of control that they're really witnessing. And so what was the final thing to do? Shut them down, cut it off, do whatever you can. And even that's failing with Mastodon and podcasting 2.0 and BitChute and, all these different avenues, and the only thing that has to change here is our own perception. What is really the media landscape? Is it YouTube, or is it something much bigger, of which I'm comfortable with a piece here, a piece there, a piece there? Maybe someone turns me on to something over here. So it's much more like discovering records before FM radio was a thing, and certainly before top 40 radio. If anything, we're kind of there with our news. We're all sick of the regurgitated top 40 tight playlist, the same shit put in your face, the same titles, the same hooks. And now we're leaning back. And this also may be a renaissance in general, which is what happens after a plague. The last big plague, there was some cool stuff that happened, and even going back to Rome and what kind of art and thinking came out of those dark times.
Hey guys, Michael Malice here, podcast host and underwear model. And I'd love to tell you about the underwear I'm wearing now, Sheath Underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use code Malice20, you get 20% off your order. We're going to drop the ads that I shot pretty soon. It's going to look very, very cool. What makes Sheath unique? Sure, they've got the stretchy fabric with the moisture wicking technology. Sure, they're super comfortable. They keep everything cool and in place. But what makes Sheath unique is their dual pouch technology. They have a separate pouch for each of your man parts and keeps them separated. And I'm telling you, it sounds crazy, because when I first saw them, I'm like, what is this? And then I put them on. I'm like, oh, this is really fun. And not only is it comfortable, you don't sweat. It's cool in the summer. It's also a little bit subversive when you're talking to someone, like at a job and if you're on a date, knowing that your underwear is cupping your junk. And if you go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off your order. They also have a girls line, but you'd have to ask Bridget Fetisi about that, because she models them and I only model the guy stuff. Let's get back to the show. This is one of the reasons I am so optimistic about the future of this country and the world in general, because when we were younger and I wanted to listen to music, I could go to Sam Goody's, or I could go to The Wiz, or I could go to Coconuts. We didn't have Coconuts in Brooklyn.
Tower Records.
Tower. You had Tower on Broadway. Bowie had a penthouse across the street, by the way. And now the idea of going to like one music store to get your music is insane.
Well, what's worse, here's the thing that's horrible about it. This is a big part of my mission. We lost price discovery. So when iTunes came out, I would say arguably Apple was the first to really, put a system into place. 99 cents a track.
Yeah.
And that was almost, to me, that's the biggest FU to every artist on the earth, because you don't allow the appreciation to really flow back. I mean, to me, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, one of the best love songs ever written, is worth $99 every single time, and I'd be happy to pay for it. And in fact, I want to continuously show my appreciation for what that song means to me. We lost that, and it carried over into apps. You might as well just, settle that it's going to be free. And oh, by the way, if you're going to make any money, we're going to take 30% of it. I mean, this is another, people are also going to find out that this is another jail they really don't want to be in. Apple stuff is beautiful. My wife has iPad Pro and it's so slick and smooth, and I just want to lick it. It's so nice. But I can't allow myself to be locked in and tracked, and because Apple's tracking for their own benefit.
Yeah, sure.
But locked in, so I can't do stuff I want to do. And now we're seeing all these things. Well, you can buy this phone and you stick in this cable and run that software, and it takes all the Google off of it. And you can make it do stuff you want it to do. And this is very empowering once you kind of understand what the possibilities are and are willing to do a little bit of research. We're so technologically in depth. It's gotten so bad. We had Snowmageddon here in Texas, and we were snowed in for 4 days with no electricity in the middle of winter.
It was literally the day I left. And everyone's like,
really?
"Oh, move to Austin, move to Austin. You're not going to deal with New York winter." I'm like, "All right, guys." So they're like, "It's frozen. We don't."
Oops.
You're here.
There we go.
I got you. Yeah.
You really you killed Zoom for a second. You were so excited. So I'm out there with my neighbors, and we're trying to shovel a pathway on like the third day. And we have no snow shovels. We're using trowels and buckets and crap. And what do you have? I got this. And so one guy is a Vietnam vet. The other guy is an IRS inspector. And it's like, we'll see, you got anything? You need anything? Because our pipes didn't crack, so we had water. And he said, "Yeah, man, I really wish I could cook, but I can't turn on the stove because the igniter won't go without electricity. It's a gas stove." And once I clued him into it, he was very embarrassed. But this is the level we've gotten to. It's like we don't even think anymore about what's going on here. You click, 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 it goes on. Yes, you can use a match or a lighter or one of these other devices, and then it'll also go.
But Adam, that's the scariest thing for anyone to do. Turning on that pilot light, that's terrifying. I've had to do that, and I'm just like, I'm going to blow up, I'm going to blow up, I'm going to blow up.
You've watched too many movies that are sponsored by the green movement.
But it's scary, though. Come on. Maybe it's just me because I'm like a nice little Brooklyn Jew. So starting a fire is like, this isn't for me. Especially on Saturday. Are you kidding me? This is crazy.
Saturday. Any day, but not Saturday.
Yeah. What I want to talk to you about, I had this tweet a while ago, and I said, you can attack the Supreme Court, the universities, the media, publishing, the president, every senator, every congressperson, athletes, comedians, actors. It is only when you criticize the CIA where you are immediately regarded as a lunatic. And I don't think this is by accident at all. How would you explain to a blue-pilled person how pervasive CIA influence is? Because even if you tell them about something like Project Mockingbird, they will tell you to your face that you're exaggerating, you're making this up. And it's like, but this is something the CIA openly talked about and admitted, but they still won't believe you. It's really, how do you navigate that?
Well, it is, after all, the Central Intelligence Agency. So,
Sure.
We've been kind of trained into thinking that they jump out of airplanes and save the world, which was honestly the moniker when it was, just as it went from OSS to the Central Intelligence Agency. Let's put it this way. My family, the ones who either have been or may be still or were in the service in the agency, none of them are the kind that would jump out of airplanes. So they're doing something, and they're highly educated. They went to all the right schools.
Yeah.
And so it's information warfare. In fact, when I started kind of awakening around 2008, I definitely, someone turned me on to InfoWars, and I thought, wow, the guy's a little off the hook, with his presentation style, but InfoWars, that's exactly what we're in, information wars. And so definitely, if anyone, could read Legacy of Ashes, that gives you a good idea of what the agency really is. Now, there's always a lot of cloak and dagger stuff.
Sure.
But just look at the pure roots. Read the history of the CIA, and you understand why they are where they are today. And then turn on the news, especially cable news, and see all the former CIA operatives who are appearing as pundits to tell you about the CIA. I mean, any normal person can at least stop and think that's kind of odd. You'd have someone from the CIA talking about how great the CIA is. In fact, the former director of the CIA is a paid pundit for MSNBC in John Brennan.
Oh, by the way, I got to interrupt you. If I would encourage everyone to go to johno'brennan.com because it seems like the intelligence head wasn't smart enough to buy his own domain name and someone bought it for him.
Oh, nice. Nice. We had SeanHannity.com for a while there. That was pretty funny. Someone registered it and just pointed it to our website. We had a couple of those. But it's the same. If you look at the FBI, and this is very pertinent to today, the FBI, from its onset with J. Edgar Hoover, has always been an organization that blackmails people over sex. That is what they do, and that's the legacy of when it started. You can read literally what kind of stuff J. Edgar Hoover was into, and that periodically they try and clean it up a little bit, but ultimately, look what they did with President Trump. Again, it's the guy's penis. It was a golden shower. It was all this. It's always about this nasty crap. Now, I think we will find eventually some Jeffrey Epstein tapes will come above board, and there'll be more information about that blackmail situation. I think we'll see a Central Intelligence Agency and maybe some other intelligence agencies involved in that. It is what they do. It's almost as if, remember we were talking about how Puritan the Netherlands had become. It's almost as if they first programmed everybody like sex is bad, certainly if you're doing it outside of wedlock, and then just come up with all this crazy stuff that could have been going on. Whether it goes on or not, whatever people do in their bedroom, I don't think you really ever want to really describe it. And they use that, and they honey trap people. It's the easiest way. You don't have to do a lot of sleuthing. It's just like, hey, is he screwing somebody on the side? Good. That's enough. Then we can go blackmail him. And that just perpetuates itself, and people hire blackmailers. And so we've gotten to this, in my view, we've gotten to a situation where it's just bloated with all kinds of excess stuff. And it's so criminal that everything, you get into it, and you can't really get out without playing the game. And everyone just wants to play the game. And we're seeing that now in work, in school, in social circles. Many of us play the game just to go along with it because I just want to keep my friends. I just want to keep my job. I just want to keep my chance at a promotion. I just want to be comfortable and easy. That, by the way, is something that is un-American and is a real problem right now.
This is one of the things people don't realize, because if you listen to the New York Times and basically broader progressive culture, you're going to have a very skewed vision of history, because it's going to be this kind of fairy tale where there were bad guys, then we came in, we were the good guys, and we're making it better, but the bad guys are still here, but we're just going to keep making it better. It's a very simplistic kind of morality play. What people don't appreciate is back in the day before World War II, being gay wasn't that much of a big deal. It became a much bigger deal with the rise of kind of puritanical thought in that era. And what ended up happening is a lot of these people who are closeted became blackmail subjects for the Russians, because the Russians okay, they'd either entrap them or they get footage, and they're like, all right, here's what's going to happen. Either you are going to be an asset for us, or we are going to publicly out you and your life is going to be ruined. So what's it going to be? So smartly, as a reaction to this, and maybe necessarily, there became a huge stigmatization about gay people working for the government, because they were all regarded as targets for the Soviet Union. I don't think people appreciate in this country how pernicious puritanical thought is, because it's not just like, don't do these bad things. It's like, well, when the people do these bad things, they thereby become vulnerable toward malevolent actors. A more contemporary example was Andrew Gillum, who was I think he's using meth, and he hired a male escort, and he was caught passed out. If he wants to get his, if he wants to get his rocks off that way, literal crack rocks, more power to him. Well, what people don't appreciate is, if this guy had been governor, he is blackmail bait for everyone who wants it to be. And that is where things get really, really dangerous. It's not what he's doing and cheating to his wife and whatever arrangement they have. It's their business, not mine.
That's kind of what I appreciated about Mayor Marion Barry. He was kind of like, I'm a crack addict. Tom Ford, I'm a drunk, I'm a crack addict, but here I am, I'm running the show.
Wait, no, you got the quote wrong. When Tom Ford, who should have been president, was asked about his crack use, he said, yes, I may have done crack, but it was during one of my drunken stupors. That was the exact quote.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this guy needs to be president. I don't care if he's Canadian. Bring him up here. Sadly, he passed.
But it is true. If you look at now, this was around the time Bill Clinton, of course, was what an incredible scandal this was, and maybe that really solidified a lot of this thinking. But in France, I mean, you got a mistress, you're the president, of course. Everyone knows that. We just, it's whatever it is. Just let it go. It's fine. It's okay. Yeah.
Hey guys, we're welcoming back IPVanish VPN to the show. IPVanish has been a longtime sponsor of ours, so it's great to have them back. Let me tell you about IPVanish. If you care about the security of your online activity, the easiest way to protect yourself is with IPVanish VPN. It's got a 4.5 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot, and it provides an encrypted connection for all of your internet traffic, which helps to prevent websites, Wi-Fi providers, and even hackers from intercepting your data. You can help keep your financial details, personal information, and online activity safe from threats with IPVanish. Now, you get started with this limited time offer. You get 50% off monthly and annual subscriptions. Here's what you got to do. You go to IPVanish/welcome. That's the letter I, the letter P, the word vanish.com/welcome, all lowercase, and you get 50% off. VPNs are virtual private networks. They're a great way to keep your information secure and private, and to make sure people you don't want to see it don't see it. So check them out. Let's get back to the show. This is what people, because we're a little older, the kids don't appreciate how evil the Clintons were. I'm sure you remember, because I remember very, very well, when the Monica Lewinsky story was being broken by Drudge, which was a huge moment in terms of internet culture versus, the corporate media. There was a campaign by Clinton's goons going out and saying that Monica Lewinsky was a stalker, that she was obsessed with the president. She was stalking him like he's scared. And it's like, she's a 21-year-old intern, and you are perfectly content to destroy her life and her character and make her out to be this kind of lunatic just to protect your boy in power who did everything she was accused of. And if it wasn't for that dress, we would be told to this day that Bill Clinton was the victim of this crazy kid who should be shunned and made into a pariah for the lies that her mentally ill head made up about our honorable president. That is the depths to which the Clintons, among many other things, sank during their presidency. And I don't think people who are younger appreciate how depraved that is.
Well, but also the way it was presented, and I only know a lot more about this in hindsight.
Yeah,
I was in the middle of MTV days, entertainment, yippee-ki-yay. And so it was a punchline. As long as you could end your segment with blue dress or spot on the dress or dry cleaner. And, and that's one thing I'd like to say when people say that, there's no way that everyone in the media could be all clued in and we're all going to be pro this or anti that. It's absolutely how it works. And you just go with and even though I never had a real job security issue with that, it's just, okay, it sounds right. I saw the headline. That's good. Yeah, I believe it. I trust you. Okay, let's go.
Who might argue?
Yeah, it's good. Let's go. I'm not going to die on that hill, whatever it is. It doesn't really bother me, whatever, but you never really look deeper into what's going on. And I think people are now seeing that, kind of bringing that back. What you said earlier, there was a good piece in The Guardian today, opinion piece, that said exactly this, like, hey, if this lab theory thing pans out, then we've lost so much credibility. The news business probably can't recover the public health science. And, we've been told by science, since really the 90s, I've been tracking it, it's global cooling, it's global warming, that's climate change, and we're all going to die. And, without really giving us a scientific overview of what's really happening, how sunspots work and, rotation axis, all this stuff. It's like, shut up, you're a denier, science. And that is also going to slowly start to fall apart. People can actually track, temperature themselves and can actually see what's happening and look at sea levels. And it's the awakening is not going to be like, oh my God, and then we all woke up and we were red pilled or whatever. It's a slow process, 10, 15 more years at least before we're kind of there. But in the meantime, there's a nice little nucleus of that's just spreading out and interconnecting like we're doing now. I mean, that really is making a change. And it's so cool that we're all in competition, but we're not, we're not all chasing after the same dollar. Right. We're not all chasing after the same audience. The audience comes and goes, they cross over. It's nothing like it. None of us will be millionaires. we'll probably get exactly what we deserve. Fine ass life. I'm happy. I can keep doing this and keep paying the mortgage. I'm good.
Okay, let's talk about that. So I'm moving to Austin. I'm looking for real estate right now. What should I don't even know how to drive, Adam. I'm going to learn. I
saw you post about the car you're looking to get. Very nice.
That 1982 Cadillac. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a Chevy Nova from that era, straight six, classic cars.
Yeah,
man.
They're great. When I was a kid and I saw one on the street, I would always point it out to my parents. I'd be like, Cadillac, and it was such a cool thing. Yeah. And you can imagine as a kid, it's like a boat. So you're like, oh my God, that's so cool. You're driving a boat on the street. And I'm not going to drive it because they're not going to be reliable. It's going to be $5,000, which is not a crazy amount of money. But I'm going to, cancel off that little immigrant's dream of owning that Cadillac. But what I want to know is, as a New Yorker, what should I know before moving to Austin, number one? And number two is, my understanding, everyone's telling me it's gotten really bad really quickly in recent years. I can't imagine it's getting anywhere near as bad as New York is now. Has that been your impression as well?
Well, okay, so I've been here 11 years. When I got to Austin, it was a funky town with ambitions. And guess what? Those ambitions started to pay off. And we really started to commercialize. And so that's really the difference, is corporatization. So South by Southwest is an excellent example. Yeah. It is one of our biggest events. We now also have Circuit of the Americas, which brings us we are the stop for Formula One. So as long as we have those kinds of things going, Austin will be reasonably okay. What's new is the tech migration.
Okay.
And that part concerns me a little bit. Well, for me personally, I was in San Francisco a lot during the post.com boom. And I'm not interested in sitting in a restaurant hearing some guy talking about his SPAC and all that. That's not what I really want anymore. So for sure, people are much prettier on the street. Lots of pretty people walking around. But they still feel a bit transitory in a way that they really don't care much about Austin. As much as being in a place where housing is cheaper where they came from, the food is great, people are laid back. It's a very, very friendly town. Unfortunately, in the past 2 years, it really started with a small change in the law, which is the exact same one that started this problem in Idaho and in the big cities in California, et cetera. And that is by allowing people to camp on any public land. And we became, to some degree, a destination as well for people that just, hey, it's like Austin's pretty cool. Just get a tent. And, they're new tents, and some people just living that way. And, that has not been solved, even though that rule has been overturned. An overwhelming majority in a definitely very progressive town to say, no, we have to reinstate that. Nothing's been done, nothing's implemented. So there is something brewing, and it's going to come to a head, and it's going to be ugly. But that's really in the downtown nucleus. There are lots of really cool places to live in Austin. It's very expensive, and it's only going to get more expensive. So the sooner you can come, the better. But I would say even some towns outside of Austin, which, we're only talking 20 minutes to Dripping Springs, a little bit further to Spicewood. There's Bastrop. Now, I know a lot of younger people who are going out there mainly for cost, but our roads are pretty good. Austin itself, traffic is, you're not going to be rolling your caddy around because we got problems during rush hour. There's a $70 billion rail that is projected to start soon. And so they have all kinds of great ambitions. So I guess the main thing would be, if you want to walk to stuff, are you thinking downtown, or are you thinking in a neighborhood, or what are you looking for?
I guess my entire life is filling unrequited dreams. So besides that Cadillac, the dream has always been in New York to own a townhouse, right? Because having a townhouse in Park Slope, you've made it. I didn't realize Austin had townhouses. So I'm like, oh, I could have the townhouse in Austin. But then I've just been looking at real estate. Yes, it's expensive, but I saw a house that was $600,000, which is not cheap, certainly by American standards, but it was 4-bedroom, and there's this huge backyard and everything else.
Where was it? Do you remember the neighborhood? That's quite a deal, actually.
Well, it got snapped up in a day.
I was going to say, you might want to jump on that.
Yeah, it got snapped up in a day.
So most of what looks like a New York townhouse or like a Brooklyn townhouse is actually multi-family unit dwellings, and these are popping up everywhere.
Yeah. Now I don't want a townhouse. Now I want the lawn. I want the backyard. I'm like, screw the townhouse because.
Okay. How about Georgetown? Georgetown is nice. It's just to the north of us.
Hold on. I'm going to find you exactly.
A real nice community. And it's interesting. So Georgetown is not Travis County, and there's no people homeless walking around Georgetown.
But the thing is, now I don't want a townhouse. I want this huge house.
So you can get your grass. You can get your grass in Georgetown. I promise you'll be okay.
Let me find. So
I'm going to hook you up with my realtor. Debbie's going to take care of you.
But the point being, that house in New York would be 3.5 million.
Oh, of course.
It's, but I mean, it's of course to you, but as a New Yorker, because for years when we were young, LA would compete with New York on rent, right? So if New York rent was $1,000, LA would be like $750, but then you'd have to get a car, so it wasn't that much of a better deal. So I assumed Austin, given how hot it is, would be like 80% of New York prices, and they're like a third or like a 40%. I'm like, holy crap! And to quote Lauren Chen, who I'm sure you're familiar with, why am I funding my own oppression? Why am I paying a lot of money for lower quality of life when all my friends are there? I could have a huge house. I'm going to be able to protect my home with a gun. I'd be able to, be free and be appreciated. I mean, sure, there's the old school Austin people don't want us newcomers, but plenty of others want people who are independent creators who are making things happen.
Oh no, and I'll just say in defense of that, I think the old school Austin people, and I'm not really old school. They're all over it, and they've seen Austin change. It's been it's been very noticeable in 10 years time. If anything, I'd say people, as a content place, people really are starting to see Austin as a great place to come to. Also, a lot of people who do like spiritual energy healing work. David Sutcliffe, who is a friend of ours, he just moved from the West Coast here, and so there's all homeopathy, and there's all kinds of much more in touch with the earth type spiritual things. There's very, very big communities here that thrive in this environment for sure. And I think people enjoy seeing that because that's still a bit of the weirdness. What we can no longer legitimately claim is the live music capital of the world. That's just not true. The small venues, what was left, I don't think most of them really survived COVID and the lockdowns. So we still have the big events, but really, like, you're going to come to Austin, you're going to find a place, you're going to play a couple gigs. No, that's not going to happen.
I remember I was there during COVID, I think September maybe it was, and I was walking through downtown, and it was like a very kind of like I'm in a parallel universe because there was that big strip, which was 24/7 bars and bands. And I was walking 6th Street. Yeah. They were all closed and they're only like crackheads roaming around. And this was like 9 p.m. This was in the middle of the night. And it took me a second for my brain to make the connection that this was the street you were on, where it was a 24/7 party and everyone was having a good time, And I'm like, holy crap. I had thought, or I didn't even think about it, to be fair, that, this was just New York. And then I'm like, they've done this everywhere. They've sucked all the soul out of these towns who had something to compete on and something special. And you might make the argument, well, what choice do they have? But there seems to be very little hand-wringing over the cost. It wasn't like, what a shame that we had to destroy all this in order to save human life. It's like, too bad. And that to me is, I find very disturbing.
That's a disconnect, because lots of our friends are in the restaurant business or retail or entrepreneurs in some other way. And the destruction has been very, some have made it through okay. And there was a lot of sharing of how they're doing stuff. But no, I mean, people, and that also is maybe a bit because, and then maybe American and being Texan, people are like, all right, I'm just going to pick up where I can and move forward. Got screwed on that one. We'll do this. And certainly entrepreneurs, we're kind of used to that. Oh, that didn't work, or that went wrong, or something external happened. And there's really nowhere else to go, which I've always, sadly now the federal government has way too much hand in our affairs, and particularly with money and how money is manipulated. So we really don't have much recourse. But we also don't have much of a safety net. It used to be kind of we could take care of our own, and you save some money. We've got everything's reversed. We're living on credit and it's reverse saving. I mean, there's so many things that we've kind of been suckered into that we will get out of it. It's obvious, the signs are there, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be harsh for a lot of people. And I think what we're going to see in the next few weeks is going to be another huge supply crunch. There's China. I think China is being very malicious, and they have shut down one of their big ports, the big port in the south, and because of the Delta variant or whatever they made up for it, and so the docks are literally closed. So shipping containers are not moving, and we're going to see another supply crunch that is going to teach us that we need to set up our systems differently. This just in time and everything's ho hum and hum, it's all good. We're incredibly vulnerable, and we're about to see it again.
I have a softball question for you, but I still want to hear your thoughts. How concerned are you with the coming amount of inflation?
Well, my wife and I decided to re-enter Bitcoin.
Yeah.
When it was around 6,800. Also,
6,800. I think you said 68,000. Okay.
No, 6,800. No, I was given a whole bunch of Bitcoin, like 65 of them, and I sold them when it went to $1,000. Like, wow, let's get out of this shit. This is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, everyone who's in Bitcoin has a story like that. So we re-entered also because I was working with, starting to think about this Lightning Network and all the stuff that could happen. And I knew that that what was going on, the market dip, it had to go back up. That was pretty easy. But I've really made the study of the Bitcoin standard and the case and how it combats inflation of the dollar. And it's one of those things, you never thought that certain things would happen. Like you see a President Obama, never thought that would happen. President Trump never thought that would happen.
Yeah.
Never thought we'd have a pandemic. And all these things you never think would happen. Well, I never thought that the dollar could go into hyperinflation. Never thought, but yeah, Zimbabwe has happened. It's happened there. This El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as an approved national currency. I think it's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And all I can say is we're putting our savings in it with the idea that it's long time value. So I'm not worried about something happening now versus where it will be in 5 years from now, and I truly see that as what Fifi Lagarde called it, an escape hatch, a way out, because that inflation, it's so complicated. And a friend of mine is the former New York banker, and he explains these things to me, and he completely hates Bitcoin, and he sees how the money works. There's three different kinds of money. The money the banks use is different. That's the repo market and the reverse repo market, and that's now spiraling out of control. That's the stuff no one talks about. So there's stuff going on, and really something probably should have happened after the 2008-2009 period, but it didn't. There's either a weak sister in there that needs to go, but ultimately modern monetary theory, and we can just print, it's immunized money. It's hard for me to buy that at this point, because you see the prices rising, and that's either because people are just jacking it up to be a-holes, or the actual buying power is diminishing, so it has to go up. And and maybe some of that is intentional. Maybe some of these inflationary prices are look, my broad view really, Michael, is that the banking system has nowhere to go but printing. They screwed it up. In 2019, or at the end of 2019, the repo market, this is overnight lending rates, spiked to over 10%. And even my banker friend said, yeah, there's a problem in there. And then all of a sudden, we got coronavirus. And I think that was probably, if intentional, it was certainly used to do a lot of things with the market, give us a reason to hyperinflate the currency, which is what you typically do after a war or during a war.
Yep.
So maybe this was kind of the war event, so a 9/11 or whatever it is, to just go put money into the system. But I think the intent was, and I take these people at their word. I look at the World Economic Forum. I look at Klaus Schwab. I look at who's on the boards there. when they say the Great Reset and, you're not going to own anything and you'll love it, I take them at their word. They believe that. They can be maniacal, but they have these meetings. It's undeniable that all the central bankers are there and they're talking about this stuff. And I believe now, looking back, that President Trump saw this happening, saw what they were intending to do, which is crush the economy, but leave the big box stores open, leave the McDonald's fast food open, leave all of that stuff open. And, so you have total control, crush, to reset the money, whatever the plan was. And I think that President Trump said, you know what? We may lose 30% of people with some shitty product, but why don't I bribe these a-holes with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, get their crazy ass vaccine out there, so at least we can bring the economy back.
Yeah.
There's no other reason, because you have a pandemic that should typically last 4 years before you even think about a vaccine.
Right.
We can't overlook what happened here. And then name it Operation Warp Speed and all this stuff. This is the stuff that I have time to look at. Like, well, I'm sure this shoddy product was not, which I think it is, was not intended. They just rolled with it like, holy crap, look at all this dough we can make. They're paying up front. Let's go. And of course, they have their own agenda and they don't want to stop, and everything's going to be a vaccine. And we have the COVID pill coming from Merck and on and on and on and on. So I think they meant it, and they may not be done yet. They may still have something up their sleeve. I hear the cyber pandemic. That's the next step.
Adam, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
My favorite part is just yapping with you. I didn't even promote anything. I didn't get on my high horse about anything. Just having a nice chat. And we should do this more often. Doesn't even have to be on the show. Oh, wait, you're moving to my backyard. We can go out for beers. You bet. I look forward to it. And Texas will be a lot richer for your arrival here.
I am welcome. Hey, everyone, before we go, if you enjoy this podcast, you might enjoy some of the other podcasts available at gasdigitalnetwork.com. This week, we're highlighting Stoke the Fire, which is hosted by the lead singer of Killswitch Engage, Jesse Leach, and his co-host, Matt Stocks. You can find the full catalog of episodes on demand at gasdigitalnetwork.com or catch the latest 15 episodes anywhere you find podcasts. Here's a clip.
I had money in my bank account. My band, and I actually had learned how to do my job to control my drinking enough to where I wasn't sloppy on stage, or really. I mean, I wasn't as good as I am sober, but I wasn't like falling off the stage, which I've done before. I learned how to control it. We were in Brisbane on tour with Metallica, and I woke up one morning after drinking the night before, and I drank a whole lot the night before. And I'm sure I was intoxicated, but I did not get the mental relief that drinking provided me, which was it turned this switch off on this overactive brain of mine, which in untreated alcoholism, that overactive brain is constantly saying negative things. It's saying negative things about the world around me. It's saying negative things about the people around me. And it's most importantly, it's saying negative things about me.
Speak all the lies to set and divide. Try to go in, no we